Welcome to School's Out 80's Comedy Story Time.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of School's Out 80's Comedy Story Time. We're back again, we're back at it, super excited today. Got a fantastic guest coming to us all the way from Pennsylvania and the Philly area. Mick Michaels, say hello to everybody at School's Out 80's.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Thanks for having me on, brother.
Absolutely, Mick, man. Great to have you on. I mean, we're going to get into some of this, but I want my listening audience to know a little bit of background on you. So Corners of Sanctuary is your touring rock band, correct?
Yes.
Beautiful. And you're a professional guitarist, and I believe a lyricist too.
Yes, I'm one of the primary songwriters of the band. Yeah.
Okay. And not to base it all on this, but don't you have like 9 albums out? Isn't that correct? You've recorded 9?
We do. We have 9 albums. We have a host of EPs. I actually think we have 10 if you count the. We actually have a holiday album we released a few years ago, like a full length album.
Love it.
So yeah, we have EPs, singles. Like we stay pretty busy, and over the past 2 years with everything that's been going on, we've been doing a lot of writing.
Beautiful. So just offhand, and we're going to get into the comedy part because that's why people tune into the show. But can you name like one of, I just want to give people an idea about you and your success, but can you name like one of the more famous bands that you guys have opened for and been on tour with?
Well, if you're into heavy metal, I mean, we've played with Stryper and Anvil. We've played with Tim Ripper Owens, Grim Reaper, Butcher Babies. I mean, the Iron Maidens, Kill Devil Hill. I mean, the list keeps going. Saxon, Brittany Fox.
Love it, man. That's greatness, man. So glad you're on the show. I think the show is taking more of a rock and roll flavor going forward. But let's get to the 80's, man, because I know you grew up in the 80's. It sounds like you graduated high school in the 80's, similar to myself.
Yes.
And man, the 80's. And two, you shared with me before we started today that you grew up in some parochial schools there in the Philly area. And then two, man, there's so much there when you talk about like grade school, Catholicism, nuns, priests. Do you have like any anecdotal stories or anything funny, those interactions that you have with the nuns and the priests?
Well, I had we had a mixture of both nuns, priests, and lay people teaching. And throughout, I've been into rock and metal since I was really young. My older brother had played in bands, and he introduced me to Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, stuff like that. So relatively early on, I started growing my hair long, or what I considered to be long. I had I kind of had an afro type of hair. So it grew long, but it seemed to grow high and wide much more. Now, again, I fit into the 70's real good like that. But in Catholic school, it probably wasn't the best thing. But so it was like they used to call me Wolfman or something like that because it was just this big woofing, bit of hair. I was constantly berated about my hair. And the problem is like with my hair, like if it it just didn't look good short. So because I had these tight curls and it just kind of just didn't sit on my head right. So my mom was fine with me growing it out so the curls kind of relaxed a little bit. Unfortunately, the school didn't. But I spent many of a year and a day in principal's office and disciplinary office because of my hair. When I made it to high school, my hair had grown pretty long, but what I used to do was braid it up in the back and then tuck it into my collar and then have the hair that was left on top cut around the collar so it looked like it was short hair.
Okay.
So I was able to do that most of the time.
Okay.
I got nailed a couple times, of course, and
yeah,
that kind of thing. But I remember I could not go to my senior prom unless I had my hair cut. They wouldn't allow me to go to the senior prom. I know that's not very funny, but
no, it's all good, man.
It's that kind of thing. But they were constantly on me. And then once I got into high school and they knew that I was into metal, that was during the whole PMRC thing and the backwards masking and everybody's, if you're into metal or listening to anything louder than 2, you did drugs, you were into Satan and all that. So the nuns were definitely hardcore about that. And
so did the nuns ever grab you by the hair? I mean, did they ever grab you by like your long hair and pull you out?
I got, back of the collar, the ear. I mean, that stuff was still kind of going on even in the early 90s from what I understand. Not so much I think today, but we got whacked with rulers. And I remember I had a nun tell me she didn't like me very much, and me like a smart guy, I said, well, I don't like you much either. How's that? So
love it. So nuns. So back in the day, they used to hit us like on our knuckles with rulers. Did you ever have that?
Oh yeah, we would get whacked in the back of the head. A lot of these penguins would just kind of whack. You'd come up from behind you. You wouldn't even, because as you're kind of messing around at your desk or tossing the paper football around or something, they would just kind of crack you in the back of the head. There was no qualms. No one ever questioned anything.
Yeah, and you're going to high school in Philly. So I gotta believe like you're dealing with preppies and you're dealing with the sports guys. Not that you weren't a sports guy. I don't know. I haven't asked that, but I gotta believe like there's some conflict there. Did you ever get in some fights?
There was, listen, there's always conflict, right? But I think by the time the later into high school I got, we realized that a lot of these guys, we were all the same, and actually. Most of the metalheads were probably more straight-laced than a lot of the jocks who were bigger partiers and using substance that they shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But so there was maybe some hostility in the beginning years, but by the end, everybody kind of knew everybody. At least this was my experience, knew everybody's place. And I never let that kind of stuff bother me. Now, were there fights? There were usually fights between other schools.
Okay.
The private and parochial always had to deal with some kind of public school type of antics, and there was that several times. I don't know if that necessarily meant there was any issues because we were metalheads versus non-metalheads. I think it was just guys shooting off their mouth as adolescents would be.
Yeah. So was that at the grade school level or the high school level that you were seeing the fights break out between schools?
I started experiencing the fight things, I guess, around 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
That was definitely a change in people. Like some of these guys kind of like I don't know what they were eating at home, but they sprouted up pretty quick, pretty large. And that's kind of where I seen most of the bullying and then the fighting start. And then early, like I said, early on in high school. And then after a while, everybody was kind of just like they knew where you were at. And if you weren't involved in that, you kind of just did your own thing. And now by the time mid high school happened for me, I was already playing quite regularly out. I was performing with bands.
Wow.
My bass player and I, we were, and the drummer at the time, we were, again, teenagers, but we were playing with an older group of guys in a band. So we were playing venues and stuff like that. So we weren't really getting involved in the local like high school scene at that point.
Okay. Got it. That's interesting. So did you personally get into some fights like your school versus their school?
Yeah, I was involved in some fights, and my bass player was involved in some fights.
Okay.
And again, none of this is really funny, unfortunately, but
it's all
but
good.
it wasn't, it wasn't that we were fighting like school rivalry. It was just kind of like it could have been a territorial thing. I don't, I don't really. I had one buddy who had gotten he gotten beat up with a baseball bat. He wouldn't tell his mom. He didn't tell his mom. So he's like kind of like he couldn't move his arm for quite a while. So he's in school, not being able to move his arm, but like he had to play this whole routine at home, kind of like facing his mom one way or ducking out the back door type of thing. So he avoided seeing her for long periods of time for a couple of weeks until he was able to start moving his arm around. So but I mean that's listen, that's neither here nor there. It's a lot of that you're looking back with for all of us. It was a lot of stupidity just on people
absolutely
just learned how to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah. I was at a high school party and individual came in from a competing school, and we were the parochial school. They were the public school, and he was dating one of the gals that was at our party. And, he wasn't what do I want to say? He wasn't a very big guy.
Right.
And he was dating the ex-girlfriend of one of my friends who was a big guy and a football player on our football team. And that was a big deal when I was in high school because like we were parochial. So for us to compete, everybody had to go out for football. And so we were like brothers in arms against the other school. But he comes prancing in, and that was like the worst thing to do because the idea was when we had a party, it wasn't intermixed with like public school kids. And I know that sounds strange nowadays, but it was just the way it was. Like,
sure.
Can you relate?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, early on, again, by the time I started getting into really started playing out and stuff, a lot of my companions, so to speak, were they were either different ages, different areas and different schools. So it kind of, after a while, became normal to me. Like, you know what I mean? Because some of the people that I was associating with weren't really. But prior to that, you're absolutely right. Like everything I had done, I'll be honest with you here. I'll give you an example. Like when I wound up going to college, it was a shock to me to find, this is how goofy I was, a shock to me to find out that not everybody was Catholic. Being that I grew up, everything I did, holidays and events and things, even ethnically charged, were all, they all had some Catholicism related to it, but I didn't realize that until I was like, well, and then that we had other holidays that, didn't, that weren't Catholic related. So yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, and so here's what happened. So this was back in the day where I grew up in Missouri. So this is back in the day where the kids were downstairs watching MTV. The parents were upstairs watching TV. And when I say kids, and kids don't try this at home, I mean, we're drinking beer, we're hanging out, we're having a good time. And then down comes this guy down the stairs. And if you picture the basement, exactly like the basement that you see on Wayne's World. I mean, identical. When I saw that movie, I was like, oh my God, I've been in that basement.
Oh, wow.
And this guy comes down, and me, I'm not a fighter. I'm a thinker. And he comes down, and I just fear for him. And so I'm trying to get him back up the stairs because I know my buddy John, who's it's his ex that the guy's dating now. I know John's going to beat the hell out of him because that's just the way John rolled. John, when you hear this, I don't think you'll disagree. So Mick, I grab the guy by the t-shirt and I get him really close, so he can't do anything to me. And I'm like, I can't remember his name. It's been a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
It was in the 80s. And I'm like, man, dude, you got to get out of here. You're going to get hurt. And I wasn't going to hurt him. I was just trying to convince him to leave. And while I grab him by the t-shirt, my buddy Matt, who I went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school with, a straight-laced dude, boom, boom, 2 times in the face. Bam. I mean, it happened so quick. And I felt so bad that I was the guy that like stood him up so that my buddy could hit him. And I had no idea it was going to happen.
Oh man, that's terrible.
But
it happens, what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
took advantage of a situation.
I mean, it was like sad and funny at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, my buddy John when he heard that guy was there and Matt hit him twice. Matt did him a favor because John felt bad about hitting him after Matt hit him because Matt clocked him. And I'm telling you, like, Matt was a choir boy. Like, Matt, when you listen to this, you're going to know that, like, you know, you're a straight-laced individual. You're an accountant. I mean, you manage accountants. You're not a brawler. But that night, boom, boom, right in the face, man. It happened so quick. I felt so bad. I felt like I set the guy up, and I didn't mean to, man.
Right,
I just
people they'll take it to an extreme, which is I don't know where that disconnect has happened, but there was something to be said about those times when you could just kind of duke out some differences and then come to terms with, like, hey, you know, this is really silly. And a lot of times you became friends with those guys.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I've talked my way out of so many disagreements with people, and most of the time it's a misunderstanding.
Right.
And many times I've talked my way out of it by showing the fact that I could be crazy. Like, you know, I get crazy eyes and they look at me like, God, that guy might be crazy.
Might be crazy.
You know, and I've never actually, like, punched anybody in a brawl or anything like that. I just tend to, like, talk my way out of those kind of things. It's just, it is what it is.
That's a valuable skill set.
What's that?
That's a valuable skill set.
Man, you know, adrenaline hits me. And I can remember in Dallas, when I first got to Dallas, and a buddy of mine hit the back of the chair of this other guy, and the guy's ready to go outside, and there's like 5 of them and 5 of us, and we're in our early 20s, you know, stupid and full of venom. And next thing I know, we're all out there. And and I looked at the guy that I was supposed to be up against, and I didn't back down to him, but I didn't throw one fist. I just looked at him and go, man, it's cool with you? Crazy. Like, I don't care if I hurt you, you know, and guys, like, back down.
Right.
Like I had big eyes. I looked crazy. I acted crazy. Adrenaline was, you know, pumping through me.
Right.
That Sicilian temper / you know, whatever it is. And the guy could feel it. And I honestly wasn't going to do anything to him, but I was just acting. You know, I was just doing my best acting.
Best acting. Yeah. Listen, again, like I think, you know, when guys would get into the fisticuffs, like I said, you know, you're talking 30 seconds. Like, if it went a couple minutes, that was way too long, and people would just they would know when to police themselves. But man, I remember I was in high school, and all of a sudden you're hearing this ruckus going outside, and it's 2 girls going fisticuffs at each other in the hallway. And within seconds, like, everybody's out in the hallway. Teachers are going. But from my experience watching girls throw fists at one another, they don't stop. They just keep going, and they hit everybody else around. I mean, teachers were getting clocked in the head and between the legs, and they're going down, and, you know, they're literally being pulled apart, you know, and then once they latch on, they got hair, and hair is being torn out, and then they're pounding on the heads. I mean, you watch that on, I mean, just check it out on, like, YouTube. You see girls fighting. There is not a shut-off point. But for some reason with guys, for the most part, at least when I growing up, there was a stopping point.
Yes.
You know, whether it was like, hey, I don't want to get hurt no more, or my hand's killing me, or, you know, it's like, okay, maybe you're right, or something like that. But yeah, that was some of the craziest fights I've seen were with females.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen a few. So it sounds like you've witnessed. Was that in high school that you were seeing some females?
Oh yeah, that was definitely high school. There was no 2 ways about it.
Okay, so was that the lunchroom that was breaking
No,
up?
that was I'm talking like that was like we had 4 floors, and then we had the basement. This was like on the 2nd or 3rd floor.
Okay.
So it was like in between, I guess, class changing, and, you know, some words were starting to, you know, whatever, and then, you know, the bell rings, everybody's in class, and it's the 2 of them, and they just go at it. And it's just commotion, man. But it was kind of exciting, you know. Like, you know, because again, you get to get out of your seat. You don't, you know, it kills about 15-20 minutes of class as everybody's calm, you know, has to be calmed down and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, crazy stuff, man. We were at we had a not that this was a fight, but giving you an example of how it, like these little crazy things that happen. And then like
Uh-huh.
you either get some time off in class or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We had a hot balloon demonstration at our school,
Okay.
and it was like early fall,
Mm-hmm.
and that morning it was windy as hell. And
Okay.
everybody was like, oh, we get to be outside and we're going to watch this, balloon go up. And basically
Yeah.
all it was going to do was go up and come back down. It's not like it was going to
Right.
fly anywhere.
Right.
So they're doing this whole talk about it. Everybody's out there. Well, the balloon starts going up
Uh-huh.
and the wind's kicking the whole time.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden the balloon starts like flying all over the place. And the rope
Oh.
breaks and it flies across the street where
Okay.
where the convent, where the nuns stayed and the rectory was next to it.
Yeah.
And it hits the top of the telephone pole.
Okay.
And the whole thing just sparks. So
Oh.
the basket though is pretty low.
Uh-huh.
And then the destroyed balloon is up top. So the guy's hanging there. So everybody's
Whoa.
like calming down, and all of a sudden the wind kicks up. And like
Uh-huh.
a sail, that balloon just picks up, and the guy's being lifted super speed to the top of the box where the transformer is. He literally
Oh my God.
jumps out in front of all these kids.
Uh-huh.
Right? There was 400, 500 kids out in the field watching this guy. He hits the ground. He does pop up because he keeps running, but that basket hits that transformer, completely explodes, knocks out the power for the block. And
Whoa.
everybody's like, oh my God. More kids for the next week, and probably most of them were milking it, spent time in the like the counseling room to just get out of class. But it's like one of those weird things. Like somebody said, hey, listen, let's bring a balloon in the middle of a school, and just bring it up and down. And then of course all the wind and stuff like that. But it was crazy. It was crazy just to watch.
Just so I can understand, because I'm trying to picture this. So you're talking a full hot air balloon, right? With a
full hot air balloon. Yep.
And there's a dude on it.
There's a dude on it. Yeah. It was set up in the field. And then they put the helium or the whatever the heck it is. I don't know. Not the helium. What is it? Is it helium?
I think it is helium.
Yeah, it's helium. So they heat it up and it goes up, and then they have it all tied down. And all it was going to do was just go up and down. And I think it was going to bring a couple of the, maybe the principal, vice principal, just as a demonstration. I don't know. I don't even know what they were. I think it was the kickoff of Spirit Week or something, or Homecoming Week or something like that. So, it was like Homecoming Week's normally November for most schools, I think. So it was something like that. And that was it. And they brought the entire school out into the field, the football field, to watch this, to do this. And it just it turned into a horror movie, literally.
Man.
Yeah.
So who was the dude in the basket?
I don't know, but he was a local guy who had I guess he was promoting his business at the same time. The helium, rides, and I guess if you want to get married up in the sky.
Oh my God!
So there's definitely a whole generation of people that were totally turned off about it. You won't get my ass up in a helium balloon.
I'm telling you,
it's like the Hindenburg all over again.
I'm telling you, man, that's crazy. He's promoting his business that he gives you the ability to promote your business with the hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And he's a professional supposedly, and he goes into the transformer, and evidently he bailed out before it blew up.
He bailed out right in time, man, right in time. And I'm a telephone pole's what? About 25 feet?
Yeah, did he fall 25 feet?
Yeah, you figure you take the basket and maybe about 5 feet before he hit the top, so he still came down about 20 feet.
Oh my God, on pavement, right?
On pavement, man. On pavement.
Oh my God.
I'm sure the adrenaline was and he was so, so scared at the point. He just, like I said, he got up and ran, but afterwards he must have felt, I mean, besides being in pain, he's looking up there. There's his whole business completely in flames, and then his reputation pretty much shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Isn't that wild? Like,
that's just wild.
Things that, that's kind of funny and very ironic. But the thing I think about is that it's catastrophic for that guy. But since he lived and he ran away from it, kind of funny. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like,
Well, you can always laugh about it if everybody lived. That's what we used to say. Did everybody live? Yeah. Then you can. That's why they would show it on TV.
I'd have trouble not laughing at it, and it's not that I'm an unfeeling person, but seeing all that spontaneity, I'd probably be hitting with so much adrenaline, and then seeing that the guy was okay. The first thing I would think is he dead? Is he dead? Well, he's not dead, and then I'd be laughing.
Yeah,
and it might even be like a nervous thing.
Yeah, I think it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah,
like that. We used to, there was a guy in high school. I mean, he would and he would constantly laugh like that, and no matter what you said. Sky's blue, and didn't do my homework, and I mean, so it was kind. And after a while, you shut it out. But there was another dude I knew. He had a weird laugh, like he was choking. And the first couple times that I met him, talked to him, I literally thought he was choking. I go, somebody help this guy, get a Heimlich maneuver over him. But he was like, that kind of, I thought he was dying. But after a while, you figure out that, he ain't dead. So I guess that's his normal thing.
So those kids get bullied for those laughs, or was it okay?
Well, I think he got, I mean, did we all make fun of it? Yeah, it was kind of like he would start laughing, we'd start, and we'd start doing like, we still do it today, actually, when we're on tour, the band, because I went to high school with my bass player. We've been together for like 30 years. And so it's one of those things, like we're still schlocking around some of the same jokes from 30 years ago.
Oh, love it. That's great. Okay, so since we're kind of like right in the 80s right now, we just had a little episode from your high school. So, man, I always like to know, particularly when I'm interviewing a musician like yourself. So when I was watching MTV, it like really opened up my eyes. Like many of these people, I had no idea what they looked like. And I kind of judged them for how they looked. Like I hadn't risen to the point of music appreciation to think, is that guy a good musician? Is he not a good musician? I looked at like Tom Petty as an example. And I'm like, man, that guy, I know he's world famous and everything, but he's not the best looking guy up there. And I kind of thought the same thing with like Steve Perry. And it might be too that like my artistic background, I'd be like, man, Steve Perry's got kind of a messed up face. It wasn't like, I wasn't like being a jerk or anything. It was just like the cemetery of, or whatever you want to call it. Like there were some people that were like, beautiful people.
Sure.
And they had great, like almost model like faces or whatever, guys and gals on MTV. And then there were some people that were less than desirable and they were on MTV. I don't completely know where I'm going with this comment, but I want to hear about like your first impression, like the first time you turned on MTV and you're watching it, and you're a guitar player at this point, correct, Mick?
Well, when MTV came out, actually, so real quick, the day that MTV came out, my family got cable.
Okay.
So it was kind of cool.
Okay.
And I mean, we had real basic, because it took us forever to get cable. So we got cable, and like we had it was, I don't know, 18 channels on this little box that you clicked, and it was attached to the TV. So you had maybe about 11, 12 feet. You could bring it to a chair or the couch, and it was just like, it wasn't even a remote control. But I actually started out playing drums. I didn't switch to guitar. So I'm thinking at that point I was still playing drums. But I know what you're talking about. I didn't switch to guitar until I was like 12, 13.
No worries. So, but you're watching MTV, and I know, like for me, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but like when I watched MTV, I thought I was going to be a famous rock star, and I'm not even a musician, but I just thought that, I can do that. I didn't think I could. I didn't know if I could or couldn't sing. Nobody had really told me yet. But I'm like, I'm kind of tall, I'm skinny, I kind of look like these guys. I could do that. But I'm wondering, like, you went on to do that and I didn't. And I just kind of want to know, like, what was your mindset? Like you're a drummer, you're watching these famous guys. Were you already, were the seeds already being planted for like future work right then and there, or did it take a while?
Well, I was definitely, I was definitely captivated by MTV right from the beginning. I mean, I watched it religiously throughout the 80s, even in the beginning 90s. And it was funny you said that, because I always believed that I was going to be like, I wanted to be a rock star. Like, to me, that was a bona fide, legitimate employment. And when you're watching MTV, especially in the early days,
yes,
it seemed so accessible, right? Because like you said, they were just, it seemed like a lot of regular people,
right,
doing, stuff. And it didn't become more, how would you say, flashy and glamorous type of thing until like right after Michael Jackson. Like, things really started to change, because I think that's when they really realized how much money could be generated, how album sales were now, that visual component was cranking things up. So yeah, I mean, like, listen, that was like, to some degree, it was a training ground of what you could try to look like or something. But here's the funny thing. I wasn't tall, necessarily super thin. And I didn't have I had woofing hair, but it never looked like any of the guys on the thing. I was short. And I still am short. Actually, the whole band is kind of short. We kind of, we played in a couple of years ago. We did a tour in Europe, and we did a festival in Germany. We got off the stage, and this big guy, I mean, everybody in Germany was gigantic. We were like hobbits. We were literally like,
hey Mick,
including
the women.
Yeah, well, everybody. Listen, what are you going to do? There's something in the beer. The beer is like water to them. Anyway, we get off stage, and this big guy comes up and he goes, "You play like much larger men." And we all look at him like, we're thinking this is a compliment. We should probably take it as one, because this guy he's like Sasquatch. We're like, well, thank you, appreciate that. We wound up getting a picture with these guys, and it's like that scene in the Lord of the Rings when Merry and Pippin are taken by the orcs, and they're like these tiny little things, and that's kind of what we look like. But yeah, I mean, listen, MTV was definitely one of those things of like, hey, I want to do more of this. I don't want to look like that. This looks a little goofy, kind of that free for all, So yeah, there was definitely something that's what we were aspiring to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the dudes from AC/DC, particularly like early on, those dudes are all like not tall.
No.
And not being tall is any great thing, but they're just not tall. And you even see them like in old pictures in the airport and everything, and everybody around them is much bigger than them or whatever. And they looked like the guys from AC/DC, they're just on stage with jeans on and whatever. And they just look like everyday guys that you go to high school with.
Yeah. Now, they were always like our heroes, Malcolm and Angus, short guys. Dio was short. So that was kind of exciting,
Sure.
For at least for us. But then you got into like, guys like, Gene Simmons was gigantic. Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee were gigantic.
Right.
Dee Snider was a beast, so it was kind of like, man, I don't really fit the bill here. But we kept going because, I mean, a lot of the guys that we were seeing even in our local region, I mean, there were shorter guys. So what we always tried to maintain a level with the band members that no one was too tall.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that it stood out. We actually, so on a real quick, we actually had a fill-in bass player a couple months ago, and the guy, he comes up and he goes, "I think we're going to have a problem here." He goes, I don't meet the height requirement. He goes, "No, you don't." Because he was much taller than us. Like, he was well over the 6 foot mark, and the rest of us are well under it. So, but that's just, one of those things. When we sometimes use our height as a icebreaker for people, so they don't, some people like to bring it up like it's like we don't know. Man, you guys are short. Like, really? This whole time I thought I was going to play basketball. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? But it's, people sometimes people like to state the obvious, like like they're Einstein.
I was riding up in the elevator one time, and my feet are huge. My feet are like size 14. I get it from the German side of our family.
Oh, wow.
Not the Sicilian side. And I'm riding up, and I think it was like a medical tech or maybe even a nurse. And she looks at me, and I'm like 16 years old, I got a chip on my shoulder because I'm 16 years old. I think I know everything. I'm riding up on the elevator. I'm working for this company. I'm delivering flowers or whatever to the hospital. And she looks at me, and I'm holding this plant. And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, your feet are huge." And I look over at her. I'm like, "Not as big as your butt." I'm not saying it was a good idea. And I got done with it. I'm like, man, I hope I didn't hurt her feelings. But you know what? I'm 16. I get away with it.
Right. Sometimes we say things.
There's some beautiful big women. So I'm not down on big women or anything. But what I am down on is people like taking, poking at me and not knowing anything about me. I kind of, I will strike back and tend to strike back intellectually. Like, it's unlikely that, many times I would even say like today, if somebody said something like that to me, I'd say, "Oh, that's a really interesting comment for somebody like you to say to me." So like, I'm not cutting them down. I'm just letting them know that, hey, you really didn't dent my armor. So man, I want to get back to, so you guys are, maybe you're not 6 foot tall, but you got a lot of really famous rock stars that aren't tall, that are really good at what they do. I would cite Sammy Hagar as being one of the best rock stars ever. And the end of the day, you guys are 8 foot on stage. You're taller than everybody in the auditorium.
Yeah, I guess so. We actually, I was setting up one day at a show, and a guy comes up behind me, and he actually says, he goes, "You look much taller in your photos." I go, "Thanks, man. I appreciate that." I go, "I'm going to let my photographer know he's doing a great job." Oh, okay, man.
So I want to talk more MTV. So I gotta believe, man, the seeds are being planted. You're watching these bands for the first time. You mentioned Motley Crue. So did you ever like keep a notebook of like, hey man, this is kind of what I want to do with my life? And you're writing like, hey, I want to look like this band. I want to look like that band. I want to play like that guy. I want to play, I want to write music like them. Like, how did that, was that developing as early as like your MTV time period?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely things that, like when, like you said, like, hey, we want to put this in the show, or hey, that's a cool, I mean, listen, like it was definitely, MTV was definitely a fashion resource per se.
Yes.
Right. Of how bands were looking, or what they were trying to do, or, what, I mean, again, being on the East Coast, that was an easy way to see what was happening on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So when you seen bands like Motley Crue or Rat, or, or something, or LA Guns or whatever, you were kind of seeing where that style was at that point. And I'm sure it ran even the gambit there. But like in terms of playing, I mean, again, I mean, you heard the music, but then now you were putting a visual to it, and you were seeing how it was being put together. And for me, like Judas Priest early on, Another Thing Coming and stuff like that, like it had that look, that feel. And that was a huge group that inspired me, both how I wanted to be as a band, and how I wanted to play guitar and, kind of write music. So that was, a couple of, I mean, Judas Priest, Accept, Kiss, they were definitely Sabotage bands that kind of really molded what I wanted to be as a player. And even early Motley Crue, like I really liked the first 3 albums of Crue. And then as they started to kind of change their format, now I kind of got away from that and got into other things. But there was, again, you can't deny that there was successful points that you could take stock in, and not everything's for everybody, because say, hey, look, you do a little like this, you do a little like that, you do a little, but you had to find what definitely worked for you, as a player, as a band. And, not everybody in the band is going to be on the same page all the time. So you have to kind of take the good and the bad and put it all together and see what sticks.
Interesting. So, so speaking of Motley Crue, you ever be out? Have you ever been out to West Hollywood and saw where they lived on Clark Street?
I didn't see that. I mean, we've played the Whiskey a couple times. We played
we
played the Rainbow. We were up in the up in that little, little loft area where they, and all that. So we actually had an interview up there once. So yeah, we've been on the Strip. It's been it's definitely, there is definitely a lot of excitement there, even now. And I think a lot of that excitement for guys my age is that because we remember a time when that was like the music mecca for heavy metal.
Right.
That, that area. And so there's a lot of that there. And it's just, it's just cool. It's just it's just a cool place.
So I've been in the whiskey too. So when you were in the whiskey, you're obviously playing the whiskey. I was just a patron. Yep. But when you're in the whiskey, did you think to yourself, man, this place is tiny?
Oh yeah. When we first got there, it was like, wow, this is it. It looks so much bigger in every aspect. But but I'm telling you, man, there's so much, not to use the term magic, but like just so much, like when you're standing on that stage and you know that Zeppelin stood on that stage.
Oh yeah.
And actually the last time that I played the whiskey 2 nights before, not the last time, I'm sorry, not last year, back before the pandemic.
Yes.
Green Day was there 2 nights before. So there was, again, you can't deny that there was successful points that you could take stock in. And not everything's for everybody, because say, hey, look, you do a little like this, you do a little like that, you do a little, but you had to find what definitely worked for you, as a player, as a band. And, not everybody in the band is going to be on the same page all the time. So you have to kind of take the good and the bad and put it all together and see what sticks.
Interesting. So, so speaking of Motley Crue, you ever be out? Have you ever been out to West Hollywood and saw where they lived on Clark Street?
I didn't see that. I mean, we've played the whiskey a couple times. We played we played the Rainbow. We were up in the up in that little little loft area where they and all that. So we actually had an interview up there once. So yeah, we've been on the Strip. It's been it's definitely, there is definitely a lot of excitement there, even now. And I think a lot of that excitement for guys my age is that because we remember a time when that was like the music mecca for heavy metal.
Right.
That, that area. And so there's a lot of that there. And it's just, it's just cool. It's just it's just a cool place.
So I've been in the whiskey too. So when you were in the whiskey, you're obviously playing the whiskey. I was just a patron. Yep. But when you're in the whiskey, did you think to yourself, man, this place is tiny?
Oh yeah. When we first got there, it was like, wow, this is it. It looks so much bigger in every aspect. But but I'm telling you, man, there's so much, not to use the term magic, but like just so much, like when you're standing on that stage and you know that Zeppelin stood on that stage.
Oh yeah.
And actually the last time that I played the whiskey 2 nights before, not the last time, I'm sorry, not last year, back before the pandemic.
Yes.
Green Day was there 2 nights before. So it was like, I mean, like, you're like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then just a couple months later, Kiss was there. I was like, man,
what?
Playing
the whiskey?
Yeah, they played the whiskey right before the pandemic hit. I think it was in February of 2020. They did their whiskey show there.
Okay.
And it was and then just over the summer, Def Leppard did the whiskey.
Man, that is amazing to me. So here's what I'm thinking about Kiss playing the whiskey. Like I've been in the Whiskey a Go-Go, and it, to me, like, especially being in Texas, like our bars are big in Texas.
Sure.
Our toast is big. The beers that you get are big. A lot of big egos in Texas.
Yeah.
But man, the whiskey is intimate in my mind. Like for a rock band to play the whiskey, it's an intimate. How many people does it hold, do you think?
I don't know. I had asked that because the second floor is not that big.
Right.
I don't know if it's a capacity of 800 people, maybe. But when we played there with the Iron Maidens, and that's their hometown, that place was jam-packed wall to wall, top to bottom, up and down the steps. So I don't know if they went beyond capacity, but that's the beauty about like these, in my opinion, intimate places, because when they're packed, it's just a sea of people. And,
Right.
you know, and everybody's there for one thing, and it really is cool. But yeah, I was, when we seen it, was like, wow, man, it just looks so much bigger.
Right.
You know, but it really is a cool place.
It is. I mean, I was there. I felt like I was in rock and roll heaven.
Yeah.
The Doors would play there. Jim Morrison had been on stage there.
Yep.
I mean, I knew the whole history of it all. But here's what I'm thinking about Kiss. So you mentioned Kiss playing there, and I'm thinking like Gene Simmons or Doc McGee or whatever is talking to the owner of the whiskey and be like, okay, instead of doing 20 tractor trailers, we're just going to bring a small U-Haul.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
So I want to talk more MTV. So I got to believe, man, the seeds are being planted.
But then we're looking, if we look at it from a point of view now, we're like, wow, there's nothing really to it, right? It's just like, you know, they got some makeup on. But you jump back 40 some years, almost 50 years, and you're like, well, no one's done that before. And this is really crazy. And like, are they real? Aren't they real? What's this, you know? And I could just imagine what that kind of, how that sets you. Like, I mean, again, growing up in the 80s, you grew up, like, you know, there was the Michael Jackson phenomenon, right?
Right.
And to explain to people today what that was like he was everywhere and anywhere 24/7.
Right.
And you were just inundated by him almost every second.
Sure.
And you don't get that today, in a sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though we're so connected because of the internet and social media, there's a cutoff point where there's so much of it, there's oversaturation. But then it was just, I mean, you know, it's amazing. Like, I mean, I could imagine what people were going through in the, you know, 30s and 40s with Sinatra, and then in the 50s with Elvis, and then the Beatlemania. It was just craziness. I can imagine, you know, what people were, you know.
Well, in going back to the 70s Kiss, like, so I was a kid in the 70s, just like yourself. And the 70s Kiss, when Gene Simmons was in his 20s, before he hit 30, he was very skinny, and his cheekbones and everything were very pronounced. And by God, when he was like that, and he put that bat makeup on his face and stuck that tongue out, it put shrills down my body. It was so scary. Like, it was scary. Like, it was such a, I mean, it was scary.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't stop looking at it. And you'd go into a 7-Eleven, and all the circus and parade magazines would have a picture of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley on it. And you'd beg your parents to buy it for you, and they tell you no.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
So I want to talk more MTV. So I got to believe, man, the seeds are being planted.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm going to take this just a little bit different direction. And then, Mick, I want you to share with my audience, like, all the stuff you're doing, but the different direction I want to take it. I'll let you take your choice. So typically I ask a guest if they've ever been on a blind date, kind of walk me through like how, you know, that went, awkward, whatever, something funny might have come out of that. That's one thing we could talk about. Another thing we could talk about is, you know, what's your favorite funny movie from the 80s? We could talk about that. And then two, if you wanted to, we could zero in on what's your favorite scene from Up in Smoke with Cheech and Chong.
Okay.
So I'm wide open, man. Whatever you want. It's the tarot cards.
Okay. The first one I'm going to have to skip on. I haven't been I've been married most of my life.
Okay.
So that doesn't count for me. I'm kind of
all good. No worries.
Favorite 80s movie? I mean, comedy movie. I mean, I love Midnight Run.
Okay.
I just think it's a classic. I wish they would make more movies like that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, you know, I like Stripes. That's another.
Oh, that's a classic.
You know what I mean?
Stripes.
So, you know, we could talk about anything. I mean, you know, and there's probably others too. I'm just not right off the top of my head. And Cheech and Chong movie, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, I can barely remember it at this point. I have not seen that.
Oh, really? Okay, years. No worries.
Yeah.
Man, you and your wife should go back and watch it though, because you will probably, like, if you're eating, you'll spit your food out. It's so funny. And if you're drinking, you'll spit your drink out. It's so funny. And it was such a low budget movie. But getting back to Stripes, so did you and your buddies, did you guys, throw out lines from Stripes all the time when you were kids?
Well, we used to do the big toe routine.
Mm-hmm.
The that's the fact Jack type of
Right.
thing, when we were a kid. Okay, hot shot. You know what I mean? That when the sergeants, the Bill Murray characters, he's getting them,
Yes.
he's going off on that tangent. Don't call me Francis thing, I'll kill you. We've done a lot of that stuff.
I like it.
I mean, that's a classic movie, man. I mean, it's the beauty about the 80s movies. You can get in some foul language and nudity, and it's still family fun for everybody.
Absolutely.
Type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went to see that with my parents, actually.
Okay. Stripes.
Yeah, Stripes.
Okay. Well, I think one of the best lines that come out, and Bill Murray, just a comedic genius. Now he looks like one of my drunk uncles. But I am curious. So, like, out of all the gigging you've been doing, because you've been doing a lot of gigging your entire life, Mick, tell me, like, what was like one of the funniest, like, things that have happened to you on the road? And you don't have to name any names, because that's not the purposes of this. The purposes of just to kind of identify, like, any funny things that happen on the road. Because, like, most of our listeners have never worked a gig in their life. They're not going to be musicians, never been on stage. And, just that whole process, I got to believe some funny and or ironic things have happened on the road.
Well, again, I guess it's all relative to the person, I guess, how they're figuring out. But a couple of things, like when we got the singer that we have now, when he first joined the band, he was so excited. Every show we were doing for the first couple months, and when he got on stage, all of a sudden he was talking in a British accent.
What?
And so we thought it was like maybe he was just doing a little bit, and we figured, well, we don't want to haze him too much. He's finding this thing, and finding his little ground and whatever. Finally, I think like maybe 3 months in, I don't know where we were, and my bass player goes, "Dude, what's the story with you?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "All of a sudden, like, you become British when you're on stage." You go, "We're not a British band." He goes, "What are you talking about?" Like, he had no idea that he was doing this British, hello everyone, that kind of thing. And it's like, but people were buying it. So I mean, he wound up working out of that on his own without any, prodding on us. But I mean, some of the funny things that seem to happen to us actually happen more to our bass player. Like, he's had wardrobe malfunctions. He's fallen off stage.
So tell what wardrobe malfunction did he have?
Well, literally, he's had his pants just drop. And just like his belt gave out or something when he was moving around, like I guess the back of the bass, they call it the buckle rash.
Yeah,
he may have undone his. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay,
I still don't believe. I don't believe it was intentional. It's not something he would have done. But it was like all of a sudden he's standing there with pants around his ankles, and we had to finish the song until he could. He didn't want to just stop and try to pick up his trowel, you know what I mean? And so I had to wait till the song ended and all. So it was kind of like, I think we even kind of, like, a couple of us moved over to kind of like throw people off a little bit, because first I look over and I go, "What the hell's happening here?" Right. And he's looking at me like, I don't know what happened. He goes, "If I move, I'm going to fall over." So I said, you know what I mean? It's like that weird thing. The other crazy thing that one of the many crazy, like, for some reason, I don't know, crazy seems to follow him. But he jumps off stage. We're in our last song. We're in Maryland. I can't remember the venue. This was a number of years ago. He jumps off stage, heads to the back of the house, just to kind of whatever with the crowd.
Yep.
And it's coming close to the end of the song. It's that big finish, that kind of thing, right? So he decides to run back up to the stage. He decides to hurdle over the front monitor.
Okay.
Onto the stage. he makes the thing, makes the hurdle.
Okay.
And he tells me this later. He says, I stood on this, like, my first foot hit the stage, and immediately I said to myself, it's like, wow, I made the hurdle with the bass and didn't miss a note.
Right.
But he never stopped. He kept going, and he flew off the back left of the stage.
Oh my gosh.
And went soaring. Literally, he was horizontal.
Oh my gosh. Did he get hurt?
Well, he hits the ground at the same time the song ends, like a bang, and you hear the bass go boom. And we just, we stop, the lights go down, we're all just sitting there.
Yeah.
We're looking over, he's not moving. We start to move, we go, James, you all right? Finally, he rolls over. And he goes, I got the last note. But he actually, I like the bass didn't get damaged, but the bass broke his fall, if that makes sense. Like it created a cushion or something, but the bass was not damaged. He got not only did he miss hitting his head on something by literally 3 inches.
Okay.
But he was cannonballing it right into something.
Man, that's a solid story. So your bass player with the wardrobe malfunction, a lot of female fans come his way.
Yeah, I mean, he has this. We call him Big Daddy on tour. He's got this Big Daddy drawl. People seem to, like that. So, you know what I mean? I mean, if you look at pictures of the band, you'll figure out who Big Daddy is.
Okay, is he from Philly as well?
Yeah, he's from Philly as well.
Okay, so he's your buddy from high school.
Yes.
So were you guys calling him Big Daddy all through high school too?
No, we didn't call him Big. He didn't get the Big Daddy name until I guess maybe 12 years ago or something. Like when this lineup hit the road, like for some reason it kind of fit him. It just fit him. You know what I mean? I think it started out as a joke, and now it's he even calls himself Big Daddy. You know how that's usually how it goes, right?
Absolutely, man. I like it. So that's a good. Those are good couple stories. I can't imagine what it must feel like to like many people who aren't musicians, and I don't claim to be one either. But I have a lot of guitars for whatever reason around my house. I know how heavy basses can be.
Oh yeah,
it's a pretty substantial instrument. And to like body slam with the bass to your back, that's a significant amount of wood to the spine.
Oh yeah, the fact that he wasn't damaged and or the bass wasn't damaged was just was miraculous. I don't know, but I think that when he made that leap, the bass just kept pulling him forward.
Yeah,
but like you said, I got to commend him. He got the last note, so he fulfilled his end of the bargain.
Interesting. Well, yeah. So it sounds like even though you guys are a satanic band, that God must be on your side.
God is, definitely on our side. He's pulled us out of a lot of stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. I gotta believe, just based upon like all the friends of mine that are musicians and singers and in the music business, so on and so forth, that God must love heavy metal, because some of the music that evokes the most emotion in me and makes me want to do something with my life, whatever that might be, is coming from the sounds coming out of heavy metal music.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's real. I mean, there's a lot of this and that, and depending on what you're into, but I think there's a lot of inspiring, encouraging, uplifting metal that's empowering to people. That was one of the things that always drew me. Not even lyrically. Just the music itself is just, there's something in it that triggers this uplifting and power. I feel that I can do anything, even now, years later. And it's like, when I hear a solid chord with distortion and the drums kicking in the backbeat, the bass, it's like, man, this is amazing stuff. And to me, the enhancement of that is good lyrical content, a good vocal arrangement. And, so I agree with you 100%.
So on this vein, and maybe this is the more serious side of the show, but I got that side to me as well. So So out of all the amazing guitarists that are out there, who's your favorite guitarist?
Wow. I mean, like probably one of my all-time favorite guitar players is KK Downing, formerly of Judas Priest.
Yeah.
Glenn Tipton of Judas Priest. Those two guys together, it was all that was what I wanted to be as a guitar player, what I wanted to be in a band.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I was also a big fan of Jake E. Lee, John Sykes, George Lynch, you know, that kind of Vivian Campbell. Though I got kind of bummed out with Vivian. We played with Last in Line, and they blew us off, and it really burned my bridges a little bit. So I kind of was like, you know what, maybe you're not my favorite anymore.
So were you guys on the same bill as Def Leppard then?
No. They did a solo night.
Remind me who Vivian Campbell is. Maybe I don't know.
Oh, Vivian. Oh, no. With he does the Last in Line band, the Dio cover type of thing.
Oh,
like with Vinny Appice and Phil from Ozzy back in the day. So we did a theater show with them.
Okay.
And I mean, they're great. They really are a fantastic band. I was, but I was hoping
what did Vivian Campbell do before he did this tribute to Dio?
Well, he's still in Def Leppard. And
okay.
Yeah, and then he was
Vivian Campbell, and I'm like, I know my music guys pretty well.
And before that, he was with White Snake, and then before that, he was with Dio. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's a phenomenal guitar player. I was kind of bummed out that they just wouldn't say hello.
So I kind of had a run in with rock and roll greatness one time. I was in downtown Dallas, and we got backstage passes to Megadeth.
Oh, cool.
And I know it seems kind of weird though for two guys to be excited to go backstage to see a bunch of guys. But anyway, that's what happened. And we get backstage, and Motorhead was in town. Oh. So it was Motorhead, and it was Megadeth, and it was Kaluna Coil, I think, or something like that. Corona. I can't remember what they're called, but they're the Italian band, Kaluna Coil. But anyway, so backstage was Mickey D's, who's on tour right now with the Scorpions.
Scorpions, right?
Yeah. So Lemmy was so drunk and or really messed up from a health standpoint that he was in a very famous hospital in Dallas and wasn't going to go on that night. So that meant Mickey D's had a free night because he was Lemmy's drummer.
Right.
And so he was just hanging out with us, and we were just going from dressing room to dressing room, drinking all their beer. Nice. And we especially liked Corona Coil, I can't remember, man. But they were from Italy, so they had Peroni.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we're drinking with the band backstage. Just kind of wild, something kind of random. It was like something off of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or something. It was like nice. we had the day off work, and so we didn't care how late we stayed up or whatever. So we get on the tour bus with one of the bands, and it was the heavy metal band from Italy.
Right.
And we get on there, and I'm thinking to myself, you hear about all the debauchery and everything that went on in the 80s. And we get on that tour bus, and I think the guitar player or the bass player was playing a video game on the tour bus. Another guy was looking at his cell phone, and then the lead singer was making coffee. And this was like 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
It wasn't like what you would expect.
Like no, it never really is. I mean, I think that was like for maybe 1 to 2% of bands ever, but for the most part, the rest of us now, especially nowadays, there's nothing exciting going on.
No, I know. It really brought it down to earth for me. I'm like, man, this isn't much different than like what I do. I roll into a town. I have a bunch of sales meetings. I'm staying in a hotel. It's meeting after meeting after meeting. And then finally I get to go home to my wife.
Right.
And I thought, man, the music business isn't much better. But anyway, so we're watching Megadeth. Megadeth gets done, and Dave, the lead singer of Megadeth, was supposedly sober, right, back then.
Yeah.
He was so drunk that they had to put him on stage, like 2 bodyguards or whatever people brought him on stage and put the guitar in his hand because he was too drunk to walk to the stage himself.
Oh, wow.
So they just stood him up there like a statue. I watched the whole thing go on, and they dropped his guitar in his hands. And then, man, the magic started.
Right.
I mean, he did great.
Oh, my God.
But he was too blasted to walk across the stage.
Yeah.
And then it was over, and they dragged him out of there like, like JFK leaving Dallas, man. They got him out of there so quick.
Oh, man.
I mean, the motorcade took off down the road. Well, okay, Mick. So this is it's been a blast, man, chatting with you, dude.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you having me on and, swapping stories with your listeners. Fantastic.
Yeah, we're looking for this to, really grow in listenership too. I'm going to do everything I can to promote. So, which brings up the part of the show where we promote. So, tell my listeners everything you're involved in, or anything in particular, any upcoming shows, your website, anybody that, wants to get into your music that maybe is hearing about it for the very first time. Mick, this is your stage. Anything, go right ahead.
Cool. If you're interested in Corners of Sanctuary, if you like old school traditional heavy metal, we call it the new wave of traditional American heavy metal. Check us out at cornersofsanctuary.com. We're on Facebook at Corners of Sanctuary. Check us out on Twitter and a lot of the other places. But if you want to go right to the hub, go to cornersofsanctuary.com. We're right now promoting 2 releases. We have our very first tribute cover EP. We did a tribute to Def Leppard. We did a couple songs, and that's called Defying. That's on Sonic Velocity Records. It's available everywhere, and I think you can pick up a copy of it at one of our live shows. We're also right now supporting our Metal Never Dies Best of Compilation Volume 2. There's 20 songs on there, over an hour and a half of music. It kind of spans the last 11 years of this band. There's some brand new music on there, along with a lot of songs that have been re-recorded, remixed, remastered. Many of them mastered by producer Bill Matoyer, who's worked with Slayer and Wasp and Armored Saint and a whole host of other classic metal bands. We actually hit the road next week for our 4x4 tour. We're doing 4 states, 4 shows, back to back in 4 days, kind of cramming it in there. And then when we return, we're doing opening up for Trap on their 20th anniversary tour in Delaware. And then we have some holiday shows coming up where we're going to do some charity events and stuff like that. In the meantime, we're going to be releasing another brand new holiday track. And every year, if you're a fan of Corners of Sanctuary, we release holiday music. It's called our Merry Metal Christmas Package. And this year, our new song is called Christmas Together. And that should be out by Black Friday, if not before. So look for that. You'll see that on our social media and things of that nature. We're already gearing up for 2023. We may be heading back to the UK in April, along with some other shows. I know we're playing with Enough's Enough next year, supporting them. And we got a new EP coming out called This Is Metal. That should be out everywhere early next year, probably in the first quarter. And we're also in the studio right now working on our follow-up album, which should be number 10, called Vengeance of the Falling. So we got a lot going on, and we're just kind of, keeping things moving forward as the world continues to change daily. That's if nuclear threat doesn't put an end to everything. But listen, we lived through that in the 80s. I think we'll live through it again.
Mick, that's awesome, man. So excited for you and the guys of Corners of Sanctuary, man. It just sounds so awesome. Right up my line. I'll go ahead and promote what I do. John Sales Warrior, and I've been professionally selling for 32 years. And I know over that time period, it can be difficult to stay motivated. You have to stay motivated come Monday morning. And that Monday morning, you need to be able to send emails, make phone calls, make the follow-up phone calls, and schedule the appointments. But more importantly, be relaxed and ask for the business and believe that you're going to get the business when you ask for it. And that little bit of time between taking action and not taking action, that's what I help with. I help with giving you the fire so you can take action. And by taking more action, you can get more results. That's what I help people do. How do I do it? Simple. I have a book on Amazon. It's called Sales Warrior. And I have a course on Teachable. It's called Sales Warrior Bootcamp Module 1. And it's a 3-day boot camp. It's a lot of fun. It includes instruction, inspiration, audio, video, and worksheets. And it's designed to be taken in 1-hour action blocks, because I know it's hard for people to take 3 days to learn all my wisdom. So I made it easy. All you do is take 1 hour each day until you've completed my course. It's foundational in nature, and it can be taken over and over. The great thing about my course is that once you sign up for my course, you get monthly information and inspiration from me, because I want to stay connected to you and I want to continue to inspire you. And there's no added cost to do that. Now, right now, I have my Sales Warrior Bootcamp on sale. My Sales Warrior Bootcamp is normally $3.99. I have it on special for $99. And with it, you get my book for free. That's it. So, just kind of cap the show off, or just kind of like to throw out like one extra little, question. So do you feel like you're a pretty forgiving guy?
Yeah, for the most part, I'm like a good dog. I guess you can kick me a few times, I'll still come back to get pets. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So, would you hate me if I told you that I accidentally didn't record this episode?
Brother, it wouldn't be the first time. I also do a podcast. I had several malfunctions over the course of the last few years, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, all right, it's good. You're unshakable, man. You're unshakable. Well, we did record it, so that's the good news.
Fabulous.
So we're gonna cap another episode of School's Out 80s. Put it in the books for this year, for October. Again, Mick, wonderful to have you on, man. Sir, thank you so much for all the stories, all the activities, all the wonderful things you and your band are doing. I think it's amazing. I hope it inspires some of our listeners that are in the music industry to go out and and really do what they want to do with their life.
Absolutely, man. Get out there, do it, live your dream. Whatever your dream is, just get out there and do it. If the pandemic taught us anything, is that tomorrow may never come. So let's live for today, enjoy every moment, and be grateful for what you have and for those around you, and you make the most of it, one moment at a time.
Beautiful. So, Mick, go ahead and say goodbye to everybody at School's Out 80s Comedy Story Time.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, man. Be safe. Stay metal.
Absolutely. And so that's Mick Michaels from Philadelphia, PA. And this is John Sansoni from Dallas, Texas, saying cheers, everybody.